Hey guys, Austin Baraki here. I'm a starting strength coach, physician, and powerlifter, and I've been coaching your beloved Alan Thrall. He's been doing a great job so far, and he's shared some of what he's learned in several recent videos. Today, he's asked me to discuss some of the most common issues we see when coaching the deadlift, as a follow-up to his excellent explanation of our 5-step setup method. To give a bit of background, this method was developed by watching lots and lots of different people deadlift very heavy weights. People come in all different shapes and sizes, so deadlifts can look pretty different from person to person. But by watching very carefully, we can identify a few common features when pulling a heavy weight off the floor. Namely, the bar always leaves the floor when balanced directly over the middle of the foot, with the shoulders slightly in front of the bar. This places the bar directly below the shoulder blades, not the shoulder joint. And this simple rule applies to everyone, all the time, regardless of your proportions, what position you start from, or what feels good to you. You're welcome to try to find exceptions, but a sufficiently heavy weight simply won't leave the floor any other way. These universal features are conveniently built into this setup method, so that by following the same exact 5 steps, people of all different shapes and sizes end up in the correct starting position for their proportions. Now with that said, let's take a look at some common errors throughout the 5-step setup that Alan explained in part 1. Recall that step 1 involved approaching the bar and taking a relatively narrow stance, placing the shins 1 inch away from the barbell with the toes turned slightly out. The most common errors in this step involve setting up either too close or too far away from the bar. People often end up too close to the bar if they have a bit of a belly and have to bend back at the hips in order to see their shins and feet. After finding what looks like 1 inch between shin and bar, standing up straight brings the shins forward, sometimes even into contact with the bar, before ever getting to step 2. Continuing to follow the method from here, especially remembering to not move the barbell, will result in a stiff leg deadlift position with the hips far too high. For these folks, I typically recommend checking positioning from the side, without moving the hips back to look down. It's also common for people to set up too far away from the bar, placing it over the toes rather than over the midfoot. Remember, maximal deadlifts simply cannot be pulled from over the toes. It's physically impossible. So if you do see someone successfully pull a weight from over the toes, there are 2 possibilities. Number 1, it's not actually a maximal pull. This is commonly seen with cleans and snatches, which are submaximal pulls compared to a heavy deadlift and are therefore more forgiving of where the bar starts from. Possibility number 2 is that the bar rolls backwards, coming back over the midfoot before it actually leaves the floor. And just think about all that effort spent pulling on the bar while it rolls back into the proper position. It's simply wasted energy that makes the deadlift feel much harder than it needs to be. Step 2 involved taking a grip just outside the legs without moving the barbell. Alan already discussed the consequences of taking a wide grip in part 1. The other error to mention here involves moving the bar as the lifter takes their grip. Alan did a great job emphasizing the importance of not moving the bar, because any movement automatically means the bar is no longer balanced over the midfoot, where it needs to be in order to leave the floor. And although some lifters roll the bar back towards them prior to initiating the deadlift, this is not recommended for most lifters, due to the difficulty with maintaining consistency between reps. Due to the bar's movement leading up to the pull, you can't be sure that each rep is being initiated from the exact same spot. This leaves room for error, which we'd really prefer to avoid in any situation where maximal weights are being moved. Step 3 involved bringing the shins to the bar without moving the bar. Assuming all the previous steps have been done correctly, bringing the shins gently into contact with the bar in this step will establish the proper hip height. One common error in this step is to physically rock forward at the ankle in order to bring the shins to the bar. This ends up shifting the lifter's weight onto the toes, and once again, maximal pulls don't come off the floor when you're on your toes. The proper way to execute this step is to therefore bend the hips and knees straight down in order to bring the shins forward while maintaining balance on the midfoot at all times. Another common error in this step is sitting the hips down too low, usually in an effort to use more quads, or to feel like the back is in a better starting position. However, this will usually kick the bar forward of the midfoot, which takes us back to the problem discussed in step 1, where any sufficiently heavy weight will not leave the floor until it comes back over the midfoot. Some lifters will argue that they can drop their hips down low without moving the bar at all, by using the barbell as a counterweight. However, the only possible way to do this involves shifting your weight far back onto your heels. Go ahead, try it for yourself, and feel where your weight shifts. Additionally, doing this will often pull the shoulders back behind the barbell. Once again, maximal weights never leave the floor with your weight back on your heels or with your shoulders behind the bar. Ever. If you watch carefully, once these lifters start pulling on a heavy bar, you'll observe their hips rise, their weight shifts back to the midfoot, and the shoulders move in front of the bar before it ever leaves the floor. This means that all that extra quad didn't actually do anything to lift the bar. So to summarize, if your hips rise significantly before the plates leave the floor, you probably set up with your hips too low in the first place. Step 4 involved lifting the chest up in order to flatten the back, without dropping the hips any lower. Failure to achieve a flat-backed position is often due to a lifter's expectation that the position should feel comfortable. This is not the case. A tight, flat-backed deadlift setup that produces adequate tension and pulls all the slack out of the bar is not a comfortable position to be in. And a comfortable start position is very likely to be incorrect. In an effort to avoid this uncomfortable position, some lifters will simply drop their hips to make it feel like they've flattened their back, a problem we just discussed in the previous step. The chest should instead be lifted without lowering the hips once they were set in position in step 3. And this flat back should be maintained throughout the actual lift. Step 5 is to physically drag the barbell up the legs. The primary error in this step involves allowing the bar to swing away from the legs. Remember, the shoulders start out in front of the barbell, which means the arms are actually angled very slightly back at the start. This means the bar wants to swing away from you. You must prevent this from happening by using your lats to keep the bar in contact with your legs at all times. Any forward swinging of the bar, easily identified by seeing air between the bar and the legs, automatically means the bar has drifted forward of the midfoot and is no longer moving in a straight vertical line. Another common error during the lift is starting to open the hips immediately off the floor. This forces the barbell to travel out around the knees in a looping path. It pulls the shoulders behind the bar too early and often leads to rebending of the knees, hitching, or ramping when approaching lockout. Not only is this highly inefficient, but it'll often get you red lights in a meet as well. Cueing the lifter to leg press the weight off the floor and to keep the shoulders over the bar for longer than you want to are effective ways to fix this common error. Finally, some lifters will experience a very fast, very easy pull until the bar passes the knees, followed by an agonizingly slow approach to lockout that might last several seconds by itself. They'll therefore conclude that they have a weak lockout or weak glutes, and perform gluteal isolation exercises or high block pulls to improve these factors. However, this situation is almost always due to the lifter allowing the back to round as the weight comes off the floor. This results in a position where the knees and hips are near lockout, but the rounded spine must uncoil itself to fully lock out. And this is where most people fail. This situation therefore represents a weakness, or simply laziness, of the spinal erector muscles that maintain a flat back, and it has little to do with the hip musculature in most cases. The best solution for these lifters is to find the weight where a flat back can be maintained and train the deadlift up from there with perfect technique. So that's all I've got for today. I hope you found this discussion helpful.